Let us now look into the nutritional requirements of the adolescent children. Energy requirement. The metabolic demands of growth and energy expenditure increases the caloric expenditure also. The metabolic demands are high in an adolescent because there is greater growth or growth spurt in the adolescent children. Because of the growth spurt, the BMR increases, and when BMR increases, the energy requirement also automatically increases. And during this period, there is also increase in the energy expenditure because these adolescents are involved in varied physical activities. They have their academic work, they may take part in sports and also in the extracurricular activities. So they perform different types of work or tasks, and therefore the energy requirement is more in the adolescent children. The ICMR committee has suggested that the energy should be provided on the basis of the ideal weight for that particular age. So here the energy requirement is calculated based upon the ideal body weight of the children based upon the age. What is the ideal body weight? Ideal body weight is the standard normal weight which a person is desired to have. The energy requirements for the boys are more than that of the girls. The energy requirement for the boys are 2750 kilocalories and 3020 kilocalories for the boys who belong to the age group of 13 to 15 years and 16 to 17 years respectively, while it is 2330 kilocalories and 2440 kilocalories for the girls who belong to the age group of 13 to 15 years and 16 to 17 years respectively. So the energy requirement is higher in the boys. In both the categories, it is more in the boys when compared to the girls. Basically because it depends upon the growth of the individual and also on the ideal body weight of the individual. The difference in energy requirements can be attributed to the rapid increase in weight for the boys. Sometimes the large appetite characteristic of this growth period. So because there is intensive growth during the adolescent period, the physiological mechanism is also geared to receive more nutrients, and therefore there is a large appetite for the adolescent children. Because of this large appetite, sometimes the adolescents they satisfy the hunger with snacky food. So instead of consuming healthy foods, instead of consuming foods that are rich in protein, vitamins and minerals, they will be hungry. There will be intense hunger, and they will try to satisfy that hunger by consuming snacky foods, junk foods, fast foods, etc., which are high in sugar and fat and low in protein. So this habit should be avoided. They should not consume snacky foods. Instead, they should consume healthy foods. And this is a physiological demand that is posed by the body. Because of growth, the physiological demand poses itself in the form of increased hunger. And therefore, that should be satisfied only with healthy nutrients. Protein. The protein requirements are computed in the same way as it is done for the adults. That is, it is based upon the nitrogen balance studies. The protein needs represent 12 to 14% of the total energy requirement. So 12 to 14% of the energy should be derived from the protein. And protein is also required for the increased demand for the growth of the individual. This meets the need for growth, for the pubertal changes in both the sexes, and for developing the lean body mass in the boys. So the protein is necessary to provide energy. It is required for growth. It is required for producing the changes in the body composition, the physiological changes, for the pubertal changes in both the sexes. And it is also required for developing lean body mass in the boys. The protein intake is usually more than 1 gram of protein per kilogram body weight per day. So when we calculate the protein requirement for the adult, it is 1 gram per kilogram body weight per day. And here for the boys and the girls who belong to the adolescent period, it is 54.3 grams and 61.5 grams for the boys 13 to 15 years of age and 16 to 17 years of age. So the protein requirement for the boys is found to be slightly higher when compared with that of the girls. For the adolescent girls, the protein requirement is lesser, 51.9 grams and 55.5 grams for the girls who belong to the age group of 13 to 15 years and 16 to 17 years respectively. So there is a difference in the protein requirement for the boys and the girls. For the boys, the protein requirement is higher when compared to the girls. Calcium requirement. Bone growth requires calcium. Calcium requirements are based on calcium accretion during the period of growth. We have seen that there is linear growth, increase in stature, increase in height, which means there is increase in the skeletal growth. And to support the skeletal growth, calcium is required. So here, for the adolescents, the calcium requirement is calculated based upon the calcium accretion. What is calcium accretion? Calcium accretion means the amount of calcium that is actually deposited or actually utilized by the body is called as the calcium accretion. About 150 milligrams of calcium should be retained for the increase in bone mass. So for the increase in the skeletal growth, the adolescents require about 150 milligrams of calcium per day. Hence, the allowance for boys and the girls is higher when compared to that of the adult requirement. The calcium requirement for the adolescents for both boys as well as the girls is 800 milligrams because this is required to support the skeletal growth. Iron requirement. The increase in body mass during adolescence corresponds to 4.3 kilogram per year in boys and 4 kilogram per year in the girls. Body weight increases. Iron is needed for hemoglobin synthesis, which is necessitated by considerable expansion of blood volume, and for the myoglobin needed for the muscle growth. So iron is required for two purposes. One purpose is that it has to provide hemoglobin. Iron is part of hemoglobin, as all of you know. The blood volume increases during the adolescent period, and for the formation of hemoglobin, iron is required. And there is increase in weight, which means there is increase in muscle mass. And the muscle contains a pigment called as myoglobin. This myoglobin also contains iron, and therefore for the increase in the muscles also iron is needed. Therefore, the iron requirement for the adolescent children increases. The hemoglobin concentration increases by 2 grams per dl in boys and 1 gram per dl in girls. So, the concentration of hemoglobin itself increases. Therefore, the iron required for growth alone is 0.7 milligram per day in boys and 0.45 milligram per day in the girls. Moreover, there is additional loss of iron in girls during menstruation, which is significant from 13 years onwards, which amounts to 0.45 to 0.5 milligrams per day. So girls have an additional iron requirement because there is additional loss. The menstrual loss has been calculated and it has been found to be 0.45 to 0.5 milligrams of iron per day. Additional iron is required for the adolescent children because there is growth spurt, there is increase in the blood volume, there is increase in hemoglobin concentration, and additional iron is required to compensate menstrual loss in girls and also based upon the basal loss of iron. Basal loss of iron is the iron that is normally lost from the body in the fecal matter, in the urine, and in the sweat. Right? So based upon all these, the iron requirement is computed and it is found that additional iron is required during the adolescent period. The requirement for iron have been arrived at 32 milligrams per day and 27 milligrams per day for boys and girls 13 to 15 years of age, and 28 milligrams per day and 26 milligrams per day for boys and girls 16 to 18 years of age, right? So here we find that the amount of iron requirement in the boys is higher than that of the girls, though girls have additional loss in the form of menstruation. The higher requirement of iron for boys than the girls may be attributed to the low percentage of iron absorption in the adolescent boys. Iron absorption is only 3% in the boys when compared to the adolescent girls who have a higher iron absorption, 5%. So that is why, in spite of menstrual losses, the iron requirement is found to be more for the boys when compared with the girls, because girls can absorb more iron from their food. Vitamins. The requirement for B vitamins, namely the thiamine, riboflavin, and niacin, it depends upon the energy. It increases in direct proportion to the caloric intake. Folic acid and vitamin B6 requirements also increases when there is rapid tissue synthesis, because they participate in the synthesis of DNA and RNA, which are an integral component of every cell. Transamination to synthesize non-essential amino acids require more amount of B12 vitamin. The structural and functional integrity of newly formed cells depends upon the availability of the vitamins A, C, and E. Let us now see the food requirements for the adolescents. Balanced diet for the adolescents. The amount of different types of foods that should be consumed by the adolescents is given in this table. Cereal and millet intake for the boys should be 420 grams per day, and it should be 300 grams per day for the girls. Pulses intake should be 60 grams for both the boys and the girls. Milk intake should be 500 ml for the boys as well as the girls. Roots and tuber intake should be 200 grams for the boys and 100 grams for the girls. Green leafy vegetable intake should be 100 grams for both boys as well as the girls. Other vegetable intake should be 100 grams for both the boys as well as the girls. Fruit intake should be 100 grams for the boys and 100 grams for the girls. Sugar intake should be 35 grams in boys and 30 grams in girls. Fat intake should be 25 grams for both the boys and the girls. So this gives a rough estimate of the amount of food that the adolescent children should consume.